Welcome back, everyone, to Read to Me TT Bedtime Series. I hope you're ready for another fun bedtime story. My name is Veena, or Auntie Veena, or Auntie V, or Miss V, whatever you want to call me. And I'm originally from a little Dutch island in the Caribbean called Curaçao. Do you know where that is? It's very close to Trinidad, you know? So Curacao is a very colorful island. They like to paint their houses blue and purple and yellow and pink, all the colors of the rainbow. And they also speak 4 languages. They speak English and Dutch and Papiamento and Spanish. That's a lot of languages. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
So now I live in Jamaica and I work in a little jewelry store at the airport, but the store is closed because of COVID. So have you been to Jamaica, Layla?
No.
No. We have beautiful beaches and mountains, and I love to go hiking in the mountains and walk along the rivers and look at the birds. I love to read. I like to practice my yoga, and I like to write. So, do you write stories, Layla?
Well, I don't usually like it, but I'm good at it.
Yeah. So maybe one day you can write a story and read it to me. Yeah? But tonight I'm going to read a story to all of you together with Layla. And I'm so grateful and I feel so lucky and so blessed that I have this opportunity to do that. So tell us a little bit about you, Layla.
Hi, I'm Layla. I'm 8 years old, and I go to Dunross Preparatory School. I'm soon to be in primary 3 in September, and I love gymnastics, dance, performance.
Nice gymnastics.
I recently came back from performing in the concert with the Miami Open cheerleaders and won big competitions. We placed in all of the categories and came home with 2 championships and national championship titles. And I had a competition next week, but unfortunately, because of COVID-19, I couldn't do my competition.
Okay, that's okay. But soon when the COVID is over, you can do all your competitions again.
And
right?
I want to shout out to Spirit Academy, my coaches, Coach Taryn and Coach Shay.
Okay. Okay, kids. So we all know these past few months have had us inside. But just remember, we're all being heroes in our own way by staying inside and flattening the curve. So tonight, we have a great story for you. It's called a Moko Jumbies story. And Layla, who is the author of this story?
This book was written by Timothy Christopher Timau.
Okay, so let's start. Nigel's heart raced as the sound drew closer. Clock, 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 like hoofed feet on the asphalt. It pulsed at an irregular beat, 1 step to 3 of his. He was afraid to turn around as he walked along the middle of the road, which was usually only for vehicles, but had now become the domain of pedestrians like himself, all here for the same reason, the annual Kiddies Carnival. As the sounds grew louder, his heart beat faster. But when he saw the first length of shadow creep over his shoulder like a ghoulish beast from one of his grandfather's folk stories, his eyes widened like saucers.
Frozen in position, unable to move another muscle, 9-year-old Nigel watched as the shadow lengthened to devilish dimensions. Joined by 2 others, the three shadows now blocked out any light and cast a frightening shade over Nigel's complete frame. Using every fiber of his strength, Nigel willed him to turn around, but when he did, the sight which greeted him seemed to justify his enormous fit. Before him were three giant monsters, all with legs, all dressed in shell clothing, pink striped and very colorful.
Frozen in that position, Nigel squinted his eyes, trying to see the faces atop the mast-like figures which towered above him as he stood on the track leading to the Queen's Park Savannah stage. But it was no use, as the sun was at the giant's back, making it impossible for Nigel to see their faces. Just when he thought all hope was lost and he had resigned himself to his fate, a big, strong, steadying hand reached out from the gathered crowd and latched onto his shoulder. Nigel's whole body shook in fright, but soon steadied as he heard his grandfather's booming yet soothing voice. "There you are! You had us a little worried."
Nigel dashed into his grandfather and hugged him tight, knowing well that no monster, real or imagined, would dare come after him once his grandfather was around. But as Nigel lifted his head to surprise, the three tall monsters were still there. The ones in Nigel's dreams usually disappeared at the first sign of an adult. Not this time. Nigel sucked in his breath meaningfully, trying to settle his nerves. "I see you have found the Jumbies."
As soon as Ben, Nigel's grandfather, said the name, a cloud covered the ferocity of the sun, and with the ensuing shade, Nigel was able to see the faces of the beasts that had followed him that far. To his surprise, it was the faces of children which he saw, slightly older than him. They looked like teenagers. Ben was a name given to him by his parents, but to some he was known as Moose, and to others Dragon. But to little Nigel he was known simply as Grandpa. Sensing Nigel's confusion, Ben laughed a big booming laugh. "Ha ha ha! Don't tell me you're afraid of the Moko Jumbies."
Nigel turned around cautiously, still making sure to hold his grandfather's arm tightly. "Jumbie like a ghost?" Nigel said it under his breath, turning around his head just so the Moko not heard him. Ben chuckled to himself. "Yes, indeed, but it's more meant to mean spirit. And as you know, not all spirit is bad or evil. In fact, Moko is the name of a god brought to the Caribbean islands from West Africa. It is said that he was so tall and his legs so long that he simply walked through the Atlantic Ocean, following some of his faithful people who were being brought in by slave ships."
Nigel looked confused. "But God isn't supposed to be scary, and they scare me." Nigel turned his head slightly once more to ensure they had not heard him. But to his delight, they were gone, disappeared out of sight. He looked around frantically, but they could not be seen. Another reassuring hand on his shoulder from his grandpa, and after a short walk along the greens, which was the name given to the path leading to the big stage, Nigel was soon in the upper decks of the grandstand at the Savannah, the centerpiece for carnival celebrations in Trinidad and Tobago.
Around Nigel now were his mother and father, an older brother, and 7 cousins. They had all traveled from all parts of the country to come see Kiddies Carnival, the children's day to shine in spotlight. Nigel did not notice that his grandfather had disappeared, and even though he had other family, a feeling of dread washed over him once more as his mind took him back to the Moko Jumbies. His uneasy feeling was soon joined by a from the crowd something which most was too young to know about was happening on the stage before them. When Nigel looked up, his heart leapt out of his chest as he saw what all the fuss was about.
On the stage, there were dozens of Moko Jumbies, all dressed in colorful garb, prancing and dancing around in well-coordinated choreographed moves. The crowd had gone wild with delight, as most had never seen such a sight before that time, since the traditions of Moko Jumbi was one of the many characters in the country's carnival that had almost been lost. The dying art form had been saved by 2 men. The identity of one was sure to be a big surprise for Nigel. Looking around and seeing the pure delight on most of the faces in the crowd around him, Nigel began to relax and eventually started to enjoy the energetic and skillful display of those people atop 10 to 15-foot tall stilts.
But just as he was getting totally relaxed, one of the Moko Jumbies stepped off stage in the crowd. To Nigel's horror, it seemed like the Moko Jumbi had set its sights on him and was making its way to the side of the stage, with its eyes fixed on Nigel. Just as Nigel turned to run, he caught a glimpse of big smiles on the faces of his mother and father. Shocked by their states, Nigel froze, and this was all the time that was needed for the Moko Jumbi to come into the crowd with his hand on Nigel's shoulder. But just before his fright fell away from him when he heard the sound of the soothing voice, "Got you."
His heart was still pumping. Nigel turned to face the Moko Jumbi he feared oh so much. But to his surprise, it had taken off his mask and now wore his grandfather's face. Letting go of Nigel's shoulder, Ben stretched out his arms towards him. "Let me show you what Moko Jumbies really do." A quick nod from his parents, and Nigel jumped into grandfather's arms. With ease, Ben lifted Nigel into the air and strapped him on his shoulders like a sack of flour for a piggyback ride. All the other children gathered, looked on in envy as Nigel was hoisted into the air. Nigel beamed with delight at his privileged post.
Oh, Ben saw nothing but Nigel. Very happy. The troupe eventually danced back onto the stage. Later, as they left the stage and made their way back onto the roadway, Nigel got a most magnificent view of the Queen's Park Savannah, as well as the many streets that crisscrossed Port of Spain's capital city, Trinidad and Tobago, the center of the carnival universe. Moko Jumbies are guardians that watch over the village. From this high up, we can see any danger long approaches. Now we watch over to ensure that all is well.
Nigel lit up and stuck out his chest at his grandfather's teaching words, proud to know that he had become part of something special. He would later come to know that his grandfather was one of the men who saved the traditions of Moko Jumbies, which had almost gone extinct back in the 1990s. Many years later, an aged Ben would be the one sitting in the Queen's Park Savannah's grandstand watching Nigel lead his own troupe of Moko Jumbies on stage. A tear of joy ran down Ben's face as he filled with pride, safe in the knowledge that the traditions of the Moko Jumbi would live on forever and ever. That was a nice story.
Series. Hope you had fun reading with us.
But before we go, it's really very important that you listen to us. Are you listening? Do you want to be little superheroes? Here is what you can do to help. Wash your hands with soap and water and sing happy birthday 2 times. So you will know that you've washed your hands long enough. Keep your hands off of your face and away from your mouth, and remind your mommy, daddy, granny, and everyone to wear their masks if they're going out.
We can do it. Why? Because we're in this together. See you tomorrow, kiddies, for a brand new story with 2 new readers.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night, Layla.
Good night.
See you guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for joining, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Bye.